Okay. Hello and welcome to the next virtual author visit at Westbury Memorial Public Library. I'm Michelle Marcus, reference librarian and your host today. Just to let you know, I will start by having all the attendees on mute. But when it's question and answer time, please select the raise hand button. And I will pick you to ask a question to our author. But if you prefer, you could also go in the chat and ask a question. Either I could unmute you, or if you want, I could ask the question for you. I'm excited to speak to author Kristina Mc Morris. Let me share a little more about her. Kristina Mc Morris is a New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today best-selling author of 2 novellas and 8 historical novels, including the 2 million copy bestseller sold on a Monday. Her novels have garnered more than 2 dozen prestigious awards and nominations, most notably the IMPAC Dublin Literacy Award, RWA Readers Award, and a Goodreads Choice Award for Best Historical Fiction. At age 9, she creatively began expressing herself when she embarked on a 5-year stint of an host of an Emmy and Ollie Award kids-winning television show. Later, as the owner of a wedding and event planning company, she served as the 6-year host of the WB's weekly program, Weddings Portland Style. Kristina's extensive experience in media events led her to become a professional MC and contributing writer for Portland Bride and Groom magazine. Her previous writing background also includes 10 years of directing public relations for an international conglomerate. She holds a BS in international marketing with concentration in multiple languages from Pepperdine University. She splits her time between San Diego and Portland, Oregon, where she's a proud mom of 2 collegiate going on 40 boys who continue to make her laugh daily. Hello, Kristina. Thank you so
Hi.
much for agreeing to do this virtual author visit with the Westbury Memorial Public Library.
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Very welcome. The Girls of Good Fortune was an incredible book. It brought to light several unknown pieces of history and events in Portland, Oregon, and other parts of the Western U.S. that were new to me. I suspect as well others here today who have read your book or plan on reading it soon will feel the same way. We will do this interview spoiler free as to give the audience members who have not yet read the book an introduction to the book. So I will start by asking you, Kristina, if you can tell us a little detail what this book is about.
Sure. Well, as those of you know who've read it, you know that it begins in Oregon in the late 1800s in Portland, where I'm from, when a woman awakens in an underground cell, drugged and disguised. She has no idea how and why she got there. She only knows that she is in the so-called Shanghai tunnels under Portland. And from there, her memories start floating back to her. And as she starts piecing together the path that led to her abduction, she also realizes she's left behind a child in peril. So it's going to take all of her creative, adaptive skills in order to not just survive, but hopefully make it back to those she loves in time. So that, in a nutshell, as you all know, is the story.
Okay. And now can you share in a little more detail what the book is about beyond the introduction you just
Sure. Well, the other elements of the story that I'm excited about are the fact that I touch on some atrocities that I was shocked to discover. Of once again, just like with all of my novels, as you, I know several of you read my novels as well, and you know that I always come across a nugget of history that I think, how did I not know this? Everybody should know this. And in this case, it was not only the tunnels, which I discovered, by the way, through a ghost hunting show. Even though I'm from Portland, so how I did not know about them, I have no idea. Busy with life, apparently, and distracted. And other than that, what I was shocked to hear about was the atrocities that happened. One in Hell's Canyon, Oregon, which, of course, if you read the story, you know, then there were court documents that were hidden away in a safe in the Wallowa County Clerk's office for over 100 years, separate from the rest of the archives, and were not discovered until, or I should say, really kind of brought to light. Some people knew they were there, but not brought to the public's light until 1995, when the safe was donated to a county museum. And the county clerk then brought them to light, and it got a little more attention. But of course, for most people, that it didn't make it to most people's knowledge, and was largely brushed away. So that was something I was shocked about. And this is not giving anything away, by the way, no spoilers here. And then also the Rock Springs Massacre in Wyoming was what I consider the equivalent of the Tulsa Massacre against the Chinese, against the immigrants there, burning down Chinatown, many murders, a lot of injuries, and everybody walked free. So that was stunning to me, and I felt like I really wanted to shine a bit of a spotlight on those for people that hadn't heard of it like me. And then past that, the most important thing probably about the story, character-wise, is that the main character, her name is Celia, and she is, like me, the daughter of a Chinese, in her case, a Chinese immigrant. Mine is a Japanese immigrant. So being, an Asian immigrant, I should say, biracial. I always joke that, my mom's side is Irish, my dad's Japanese, so we equally respect sake and whiskey in our house. Um, and so being raised in that house and not knowing exactly where I fit in, having a foot in both cultures and struggling with that identity at different parts of my life, especially as a kid, was something that I felt would be interesting to bring to the table. The difference, of course, is that Celia passes as white during an extremely anti-Chinese time, so it brings up a lot of questions of identity and family and culture, and also trying to find the pride in her family's heritage, and yet also the shame that it goes along with that, and the shame of feeling ashamed, which I think is an interesting conflict. So that's kind of a bit more about the story than just past the general plot line.
Thank you, Christina. You went a teeny bit into this. Maybe you could share a little more. I was going to ask what was the inspiration for this book?
Yeah, so the fact that I hadn't heard about the tunnels before was shocking. And so as I learned more about being shanghaied, that was something I found fascinating. That was a big inspiration for the story. Uh, it was also known as crimping at the time. And that, if you are not familiar with it, it in short is the incidents that are indisputed that this did happen on a regular basis, where historians and maybe tour guides will maybe come into conflict with each other, is about the details of how often the tunnels were used for this purpose. Whether or not there was a real network that was going on, the tunnel was used on a regular basis for this to go straight to the ships. But there's no question that it did happen. Historians will say maybe it happened 300 times a year. There are tour guides that will say it happened 3,000 times a year. So I always figured the truth is probably somewhere in between. And how it would work, sorry, dry from flying, how it would work is that a sailor would come into port, but it could just be an able-bodied man that looked like he could be useful. And he would drink some drugged ale at a saloon that was corrupt. Some would say that they would even drop them through a trap door in the floor, but either way, they would be basically abducted, and they would wake up on a ship at sea, is how the story goes. And they would be given two choices because they were told at that point that they were sold as forced labor to a short-handed captain. So they've already been paid for. And they would go to a destination, they would tell them, as far away as Shanghai and back. Hence the term being Shanghai, as we all have heard it before, being kidnapped. Um, that was a 3-year round trip, by the way. So I was shocked to hear that. And that's if you're lucky enough to not get shanghaied again at another port somewhere along the way. So you would have two choices. One is you either work as free labor, or you could refuse and be tossed overboard as a drain on resources. So that was something, obviously, when I heard about it, that was kind of the fun part of the story elements, that I was excited to write about, even though not very much fun from the people who actually went through it.
Be interesting. Thank you. I was wondering if you could explain a little more about the research you did for this novel. It was always fascinating to learn about the research process for historical fiction books. And we spoke about some of the atrocities that happened during the time period of this book in nearby Portland and Wyoming.
Mhm.
And I was also, can you tell us briefly how you discovered about some of these pieces of information and the research process?
Right. So how I heard about them, well, first it was because of researching the Shanghai tunnels, and I happened to mention to a very good friend of mine who is an Oregonian native and a huge history buff. And I had mentioned to her about the tunnels, and that I think I came across the Rock Springs massacre. That's how it happened first. And from there, she said, "Oh my gosh, I'd never heard about that before." And she said, "But you do know about the Hells Canyon massacre, right?" I think she texted that to me. And I said, "The what?" And to find out that that happened right in Oregon was something, obviously that was even more surprising because it was local news and an incident, atrocity that happened here. So that's how I heard about it there. From there, I dove into research. I always read a lot. I go down a lot of rabbit holes, a lot of online reading, but also, of course, anything I can get a hand on that is from the time period. So there's always helpful, or like immigrant letters are always very insightful, memoirs, documentaries, and then of course going on the tour of the Shanghai tunnels as well.
Thank you. That's very insightful and helpful. As you mentioned, Celia is the main character, and I enjoyed reading about her, and I enjoyed her growth. Because that book is also a coming of age story in this book, and we see changes from when we first well, we were introduced to her in 1888, but we flash back to 1885. And so I'm saying you see the differences from her in earlier years when we introduced to her, and then later in 1888.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could share more about her journey and decisions she made and how that shaped her into the woman she became.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, in the beginning, of course, she's young. I want to say, believe she's 19 years old when the story starts. This is also the late 1800s. So you're going to have a lot of naivety and, being sheltered at the time. Although she's also lived through a lot too of losing her mother at an early age. Her had to grow up kind of fast in some ways. In other ways, I think that there's, obviously she's going to be naive in other ways. Um, and her dad traveled a lot because he, as a Chinese immigrant, worked on the railroad and then went and worked with the coal mines. And so that combination of her sort of learning to live on her own, having to survive as being a servant for a lot of years, has, I think, that combination that I found really interesting and kind of a dichotomy with her personality. And then from there, because of survival, because I don't want to give too much away, but because of fighting for someone other than herself, a selflessness and where you are willing to give up and do anything in order to help save somebody else. I think that obviously helps her grow up a lot.
Right, for sure. I was wondering, was any of the supporting characters based on anyone in Oregon during the events of the book?
Let's see, a couple things. Well, we've got a real person there named Frank Vaughn, and so he was a real character, a real person, real, I should say, historical figure. He was one of the people that was involved with the Hell's Canyon massacre. So I'm always really wary of giving real historical figures dialogue and actions because it's just not my forte. I'm in awe of other authors who do so much research that they feel very confident doing that. And I'm always a little wary of it. In my case, I did a lot of as much research as I could about him, but I felt pretty confident in giving him dialogue in a lot of cases because I'd read through his deposition. And so there was a lot of verbatim dialogue too that came from him that I felt confident in writing the way that he would have spoken and that he did speak on the record. So that was one person. The other ones, there's going to be obviously my dad is an Asian, like I said, Asian immigrant. So having some similarities there that I knew I could draw from, and specifically Madame Marie was somebody that I adored. I love that character. I considered her like the teacher who doesn't give A's. We all know what that teacher is like. That tough exterior, warm heart, and once it takes some work to break through, but once you do, you feel like you earned it, and they become pretty devoted supporter of you. So that one, she was inspired by two of my Japanese aunties. And one of them is the teacher, but like the teacher that doesn't give A's. She's a tough one. You know how much she likes you by how tightly she squeezes your cheek when she sees you. And the other one is one of my dad's, another of his sisters. She is she's like all of our favorite because she's so fun and funny. You get a little sake in her, and she becomes even funnier. And she will break out very confidently her very, very broken English. And so when she speaks and tells her favorite American story to tell, it's like the only thing that she really knows how to speak in English is James and the Giant Peach, which in Japan is called like Peach Boy, which is Momotaro. And she will do the Once upon a time, this is her story. I'll share with you. This is like a behind the scenes commentary. Once upon a time, uh, uh, she said, let me think. It goes, once upon a time, peach, big peach, river, rolling, donburiko, 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 farmer, open, big crystal surprise, akachan baby, the end. And that is James and the Giant Peach, according to Aunt Hee-chan. So I love how she speaks in English. It is so endearing to me. And at first, I struggled with how do I write this character in a way that isn't going to offend somebody, or even somebody who thinks that they should be offended for Asian people, which I am. And but there is no way that I could write her dialogue without writing the voice in my head. The aunties that I know, they do not speak perfect English, and I love them all the more for it. So I thought it really filled her character and was accurate.
I love hearing that background type story about touched by your aunts. That was just a lot of fun, very interesting. Who was your favorite character to write and who was the most challenging?
Favorite character to write? Let's see here. I would say Letty was probably my favorite to write. I thought she was just so much fun. Anytime I get to write an Irish character, I just have a ball. I mean, the dialogue just comes out very fast. I love the brogue. I've spent some time in Ireland before in the past, and I distinctly remember, my dad going on a family trip with my parents, my sisters, many, many years ago, and my dad with his heavy Japanese accent trying to communicate with Irish people was like a sitcom in and of itself. So I remember distinctly there would be Irish people, he asked me, Chrissy, can you go ask them for directions, okay? And I'm like, okay, I will go ask for directions. So I asked them, excuse me, can you tell me how to get to here? And so they rattle off their instructions. You drive and you drive and drive until you can't drive no more. And then you turn right, where the old church used to be. And you're like, where it used to be. So I gathered these instructions. I said, okay, Dad, I got it. And I got in the car and he had listened and he said, Chrissy, how you know what they say? And he was in awe of my translation skills. And I said, Dad, they're speaking English. So I realized at that point that I was the translator for the week. Anytime you want to order food or anything, I'm literally translating English to English, which I thought was very funny. So Letty was very fun to write. I adored writing her. I love writing those strong, spunky characters, feisty, with the quick one-liners, and yet also has, that she's also has her own story and has been hurt in the past and has made her strong, but also some vulnerabilities that make her human. So that Letty was probably one of my favorites. And then past that, let's see, what was the other one? The most challenging character? I think, goodness, let me see here. I mean, Madame Marie was probably one of the most challenging, and for all the reasons that I said, of uh, just trying to do justice to a real character like that, I think was and it touches on a lot of, as you know, topics of identity and race and this conflict. And she is also a person who's, a little higher up. I thought that was interesting during that time period, especially for a woman. So I didn't want to make her a stereotype, but I wanted to kind of peel away her layers as well that made her human.
That's interesting. Thank you. Do you happen to know, because I just find this whole fascinating with the whole tunnel thing. Do you know, like in your research, were there tunnels in other states that were like this during this time period?
From what I hear, I keep hearing from other people at events saying, "Did you know about the tunnels here and the tunnels in New York and the tunnels in Canada?" And no, I do not know about all those tunnels, but I do know there are other tunnels, and it would make sense. I mean, especially in port towns. I think when you say corrupt port town, I think that's kind of redundant. There's obviously it's pretty synonymous back then. In the 1800s, especially in all the major port cities. So you think of Barbary Coast, San Francisco, which I love writing about as well. We all know that was pretty corrupt as well. So no, it would not. I do know of other tunnels. And some people even in Oregon have said, "Do you know that there's some still in Astoria? Do you know there's some here and there?" And that's always fun to hear about. Some I know about, but I'm sure there's many more I don't. But anytime that you've got that kind of corruption that you can go under the city instead, it would make a whole lot of sense.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. What was the most intriguing pieces of information you learned about the events in Portland, Oregon, or the surrounding areas during this time period that didn't make the book?
Anything that I did not include. Nothing off the top of my head. I remember even like learning about Labor Day, and I thought that was so interesting, and found out that Oregon, was the first state to pass that as a legal holiday, legal holiday, and I thought where it was a regular holiday, and I thought, oh, that is so interesting. So I was excited that I got to kind of put that into the story as well. But I think that was one of my few fun facts. I'm like, oh, can I work this in? But other than that, I'm sure there's something I have left out. There's obviously things about the atrocities that were just too much. They just like my World War II stories. I mean, I felt like I wanted to include enough of the descriptions of what happened to not sugarcoat it, but also I felt like, it's always a balancing act of not needing to get into so much gruesome detail that that just, is going to be embedded in all of our minds forever. So I think I think you can get enough of it to understand how terrible it was without having to hear everything. And so there was definitely some balancing there that I felt like this is enough, that and realistic that as you're listening to a confession that you wouldn't get into every single detail. It's how somebody's memory works. And especially when, in the story when they've had alcohol on top of it. So wanted to kind of make it a bit of a rambling confession as well. So that's where, I balanced some things I put in, I think, and trimmed where it made sense. So it wasn't just a 5-page monologue.
Okay. I was wondering if you could share a little about your journey to becoming an author and the path that took you to become the author you are today.
Sure, absolutely. And by the way, too, I should mention too when you ask about challenging things that I'll also add in really fast before I move on to that is that little inside scoop is that I wrote the whole book in first person. I was at like 90% mark when I realized that the story really, as it went on, became so much adventure, etc., that this was really supposed to be Chinese lore passed down through a family. And when I really realized I wanted to bookend it with the documents, with the newspaper article that this woman that you don't know exactly who she is in the beginning brings to a cemetery, and how they would never get justice, but at least people would learn it happened, and that was the next best thing. And so as soon as I realized that that was going to be the framework for the story, it did not make sense to have it in first person. It only made sense to have the prologue and the epilogue in first person, and the rest was supposed to be, is a story passed down through generations. Which, as I mentioned, the epilogue that my grandma used to say, her recipes were never measured. She'd say they were all bagash and bagali, right? So a little sprinkle here, a little sprinkle there, and it was supposed to be the stories that we passed down through, just like Irish, folks, stories that we pass down through our family on the other side that we say, Irish, we all say, right, that our stories get better every time we tell them. And that was supposed to be the point. And I thought, okay, then that doesn't make sense to write in first person because it would have been a story about her that is passed down 3 generations at least. And so that's when I finished the book just to be consistent. And then I turned it in and I immediately went back and said, okay, give me a couple days to go through the entire book and change everything to third person, which is not the way you want to write a book. It is not fun. Every, time it says I in narrative, you change it to she. And of course it goes along with a lot of other things that, you have to adjust as well. My youngest son, he's in college, they're both in college now, and I just dropped them off again back at school and helped them get resettled. Um, my youngest very, wisely said, hey, mom, why don't you just do a find and replace, right? And that would seem very practical and the easy way to do it. And I said, gosh, I wish I could do that. And I thought about it. I'm like, no, I can't. Because all the dialogue that says I in anybody's conversation would also be affected. And so you're like, oh, I can't do that. And, so that was a bummer. So it was individually going through every single sentence and making sure, that I got them all. And I think at first maybe I missed a couple, but I caught it when I went back through and edits again and caught a couple of them that were missed. So, that was not fun. So anyway, I don't recommend that. Don't do that if you write a book. I will try not to do that in the future. As far as my journey as an author, is that the other question? Yeah. So, in the beginning, I think several of you already know, I started with being inspired by my grandparents' World War II courtship letters about 18 years ago, I think. And that's how I was not planning to be a writer. Definitely not a creative writer. Anyway, I was a PR director, so I did a lot of articles or wrote for magazines, but I never planned to write fiction. It was only because I was inspired by her courtship with with my late grandfather from World War II, Navy signalman on a destroyer escort. He exchanged letters the whole time with her. They fell in love through letters. They only dated twice. Came home on leave and proposed, and were married for 50 years until he passed away. And when I heard that story and she kept all the letters, I thought, oh, this would make a great movie. And so I decided to write the film down in my head as a novel with a Cyrano de Bergerac twist, where it's a different girl writing back, and the soldier has no idea then truly which one he's in love with. The photograph of this woman, this bombshell he thinks that that's keeping him alive, or the woman who wrote the letters, and if she's lying about that, is she lying about other things too? So it was like the Match.com of World War II is what I called that. Um, so that was what inspired the first one. I didn't plan to write another book, but as luck would have it, I was offered a 2-book contract, which sounds really great when you want to be a career author. When you have zero plans of that, it comes with a lot of stress because I had no plans to write a second book. Um, but I'm glad I thought of something else and ended up, writing another story, another World War II, because a family friend had shared once that he had served for the U.S. while his brother served for Japan. And I thought that would be a really interesting conflict that would be fascinating to explore. And because of that research, found out there were roughly 200 non-Japanese spouses who lived in the internment camps voluntarily. They wouldn't be separated from their children and their spouses. It was about 31 states at the time. Interracial marriage was illegal. And so it was not a common thing, but there were still at least 200 that lived in the camps on their own. And so that, for me, I thought was an interesting part of history that I thought, how did we not hear about this before? And from there, I've been fortunate enough to have another contract, and they keep making me come up with something new. So I've done several World War II, thank you, several World War II stories, and thanks to readers like you who make it so that the publishers want to give me another contract. Thank goodness. So World War II, and then I thought, I'm not going to be the World War II author. I'm absolutely going to break out all the way to the 1930s, because that's really spreading my wings. So did the Great Depression, as many of you know, from Sold on a Monday. Wrote about the early 1900s through the 1930s, prohibition in The Edge of Lost, about Alcatraz and Italian Irish immigrants coming across to Ellis Island, and supper clubs and mafia, mobsters and all the fun things I love writing about. So then 1800s was by far the oldest I've gone back. Next up, which I'm assuming you're going to ask me that too, so I'll just jump on ahead and tell you that I am dying to tell you. I cannot wait. But I will say that as of now, what I can tell you is that I came up with this idea 8 years ago, at least. And it has been in my mind. It's been an area of California that I toured way back. I've been fascinated by it since I was a kid. Watch Ripley's Believe It or Not when Jack Palance was the host, and remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I absolutely want to write about it. But there are elements of the story that at about 8 years ago or so that publishers and agent were all kind of wary of. It wasn't really hugely popular for readers. And now it is super popular. So I can't tell you what it is yet, but it's so popular now that they're like, yes, oh my gosh, write that. So my agent at least is extremely excited, and I'm just polished now that I've moved boys back to school. I'm starting tomorrow. I will polish up the proposal and start working on it a bit, and then fingers crossed that my editor just absolutely is as excited as me and my agent are, because I really want to share it with you.
Oh, I can't wait. I hope they do because I can't wait to hear more about it. I'm so intrigued.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it's a little bit of a departure from what I usually do, a little bit of a pivot. Still historical though. Early 1900s is the plan right now. So, yeah, but it has some new elements that I haven't tackled before.
Really intriguing, definitely. Our audience might like to hear book recommendations. Can you please share some books that you read recently and that you can recommend?
Oh goodness. Okay, so I absolutely cannot wait to read so many books on my shelves. But I do mostly research lately, and then also reading, books for cover quotes and that kind of thing. I will say that one of my dearest friends in the world, Erika Roduck, historical author. Of course, her latest novel just came out yesterday, The Last Assignment. So as soon as I get off here, I already post on Facebook because since I just landed from the airplane and got to post that, I'm going to throw it up on Instagram here as soon as we hang up. And so I would highly recommend checking that out. Her stories are always fascinating. She always shines a light on something fascinating. And then what I'm really excited too about is one of my very good friends, Alyson Richman, who of course is most well known for The Lost Wife, beautiful novel. She's got one that I can't think of the title of it at this moment. Usually I would know it, but I'm a little tired. But look her up, and she's got one coming out. I think it's in October, and I'm very excited to read that one. So I think she did an exclusive cover reveal with People Magazine, so it's getting some nice buzz already.
I think I know the name of it. Oh, it is in Missing Pages. I just wanted to confirm it because that's the title of it.
Yeah.
And just to also say, since you brought it up, I'm actually going to interview her in December for the library.
Oh, great.
So yeah, that'll be exciting.
Wonderful. Love them both.
You okay, so you already answered kind of like what you're writing next.
Yeah.
So this is the time where I'm going to open it up to the audience if you have any questions for Kristina. Again, use the emojis thing to put your hand up, and then I'll just do it in the order I see it on the screen to ask you questions. Or to chat if you prefer that.
Hi,
Uh,
Maria.
Maria? Okay, Maria, you can go first.
Hi. Um, the ending was a surprise, but we're not supposed to give spoilers. Did you have a different ending in mind? Or was it always going to be that way?
It was always going to be that way, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. So I was very excited when I figured out kind of the twist there that the reader could think and the character could think it's one thing and it's not. And I thought that was very fun. And I've heard from a number of people, including my editor, my agent, who said they all gasped. Copy editor even wrote a quote, like comment in there said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming."
Yeah.
And that's always really fun because it's almost like you kind of forget about a certain character until at one point. And so again, that was fun. That's, very much a Chinese, family lore that would get passed down. Exactly how that came about. But I thought that was fun. So I knew that that would happen. I just didn't know exactly how I was going to get there. So that took hours and hours of plotting kind of that last 50 pages to figure out, okay, how do all the pieces come together? How do I get so that there is enough enough satisfying ending for everybody, even if I never like tying up everybody's ending with a tidy bow, but to know that everybody's going to be okay, I think is, and that there's hope at the other side, it makes me happy.
The cover, was it always the who were you happy with this, or was it a different cover, or was it's always red and because it's good fortune, or red for Chinese? My
Right.
mother, my husband's Chinese, so
Oh,
they're
nice.
red, the red envelopes and everything.
Yep. And the
But
gold.
yeah,
Yeah, red and
and the
gold.
bows, I know the bows, and
Yeah.
so when I was reading, I knew everything about that, and
Yep.
it's really interesting.
For
But the
sure.
cover
Yeah.
was always this or
It, it
different?
it was.
Same?
They gave me six covers to pick from. My agent had come up with the title. I laughed, saying, "Isn't it really the girls of bad fortune?" But
I know, right?
you know, but that's the whole thing, right? Is that they're born in the year of the dragon,
I am too.
yeah, oh, awesome. And about how, like they're known about that now, but it wasn't always that way, kind of thing. And about making your own fortune, about making your choices, not just waiting for something to fall in your lap. And I really kind of liked that message. Celia doesn't always make the best choices, as we know. But she's always has, she's definitely not one just to let things happen to her. And she does act, whether it's rash sometimes or not. She really tries her best to do what's right. And so I thought, it applied really well. They gave me six covers to pick from. There were five with women on them, as you can imagine, historical fiction. Several of them were the wrong era, so so that made it really easy to eliminate those. And I really love that, as we all like joke, with historical fiction, especially authors, we laugh up, which cover did you get? Like the woman with the hat, backward, looking down, looking to the side, sitting on a suitcase, and we say that if there's two airplanes, then it's World War II. So, and I've had those too, and I've loved the covers too, but it is a nice shorthand to say it's World War II. But with this one, it was nice because I felt like it was a departure from a bit of what I've done in the past, and So it felt good to pick something that was different. So there were 5 covers with women on it, and one that was the red and the gold, and I just thought that it was stunning
It was
um,
beautiful.
and was different and a bit eye-catching, and you knew it was, had a Chinese flair to it. Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Mindy. A Chinese flair to it right away. So that was lovely.
One last question.
Yeah.
I'm in New York and you're far from me, and I want to see you about a whole bunch of your books that I'm hoping your next book you'll come to New York.
I would love that. I know they say that New York is kind of tough sometimes to because
Long
people
Island.
are just so busy and people can't park and they can't drive and
Oh, come to the
it-
Hamptons or the Jones Beach area. That's
oh
right
yeah, there
by
you
the
go.
beach. So
Perfect. I definitely would go to the Hamptons. Yeah. That
there's
sounds
5
great.
of us here on the island. So yeah,
Oh,
5 of us will be there.
I would love that for sure. Yeah,
I'll
I will
go back.
definitely let my publisher know. That's on the
Okay,
list.
cool.
I would
Thank
love
you.
that.
I want to meet you so badly.
I do
I love your
too.
books. I have so
Thank
many of
you.
them. I need
Oh,
the
thank
full
you.
sign.
Yeah,
Oh,
Okay, I'll
for
let somebody
sure.
else talk. Thank you
Yeah, for
again.
sure.
I
Oh,
love.
you're a sweetheart. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
thank you, Maria. Does anyone else have a question?
Thanks, Susie.
Susie?
My electronic hand isn't working, so
Oh, hi,
Now
Susie.
you want to work time for it.
hi, Christina. I just wanted to say hi and tell you how much I love seeing you again a few weeks ago at Liberty Bay Books. That was so fun.
Thank you. It was a joy to see you. That was such a fun event that I did it with
Oh,
Susan
it,
Wigg, and
yes,
we had
yes,
she's awesome, and it's her hometown,
Yeah.
so I got the benefit of having a packed house thanks to her, and we just
yeah,
we had so much fun together. We've been friends
yeah.
for a
And
long time.
Bainbridge Island is so beautiful, and yeah, I know Susan's great, and we're just wonderful together. I mean, you're back and forth, and it was just perfect.
Thank you.
So
I
it's really
loved
fun to see
it.
you again and give you a hug again.
Thanks. I
So
definitely would
I
love to
just
go back.
love this book so much. I really, really love it. And what I also love is that some of your characters are based on your aunties, of course, Marie, and then the couple on the train is based on your dear friend's grandparents. I thought that was really cool.
Let's see. Oh, you have to think now. Okay, let's see.
The,
Couple on
um,
the
the Bayo couple that had the
Oh, the
the
Bell
dumplings.
couple. Oh my gosh, I
Yeah,
love
you said
them.
in your author's notes that that was based on your dear friend's grandparents,
Yes,
right?
that's right. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's right. I forgot about them. Yes. Like I forgot that. Yes, 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 yes. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah,
because I forgot to mention. Yes, I should read my own author's note. It's been a
yeah.
minute. So yes, they were. Oh my God, like they were so round and doughy and sweet, and they were
Hmm.
always at the kitchen table eating. They're Filipino. Every time I
Yeah.
went over, they were sitting at the kitchen eating. I mean, they were the cutest, and they would just beam when they smiled. Um,
Oh,
and
so
they,
sweet.
but Filipinos, like they love their food, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't blame them because their food is incredible. So I would graze at
Oh,
their house on a regular basis.
oh, yeah. Well, that's so cool that, these characters were based on
Yeah,
family and friends. And yeah, I really love that too. So
yeah.
anyway, it's an incredible book. Well done. And I can't wait for your next one. All your books are fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
So,
so much. Thanks.
you're welcome.
Does anyone have a question?
We cover it all. I know we covered a lot. We like packed in a lot in 40 minutes.
Cover a lot. I don't think there was anything else that we
Okay,
missed.
awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm
Thank
such
you.
a treat to see familiar faces and new ones, and I'm happy to see you all. And thanks so much for reading and taking time out of your
Wonderful.
day. And this was a treat.
And thank you for doing this with us again. I really enjoyed it.
Yes. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Christina.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Michelle. Thank you for
Aw,
You.
thanks so
Christina.
much, everybody. And hopefully we'll circle back with the next book, and then I'll be able to like,
Yes.
see,
Long
this is what I
Island.
was talking about. So
Hamptons.
Love
Oh,
you.
I can't wait.
I hope so. It's fun. There's a lot of suspense and like creepiness, and yeah,
Ooh,
it'll be fun.
ooh, intrigued.
Yep,
Cool.
hopefully. Fingers crossed. All right, ladies. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
again. And